Okay, just a quick one today, out and about, just on the subject of the Dissident Right, and basically its organisational structure and how it operates. I think the clearest way to define this, basically the Dissident Right, it is a confederation of grift. That is what it's for. Like, I know they present us that they're this kind of like, brain trust of British nationalism or, European nationalism. I mean, that's just the LARP. Like, really what they are, they're all monetized. And the main accounts, this is their job, unambiguously. This is how they keep the fucking, keep the wolves from the door. There's no other income for most of them. I mean, if you're talking about Parvini, Millennial Woes, Morgoth, which is the three main ones that I look at, you got kind of like slightly kind of distinct figures like Colette as well. They don't work. They don't have a job. This is their job, and it is a job. And the Dissident Right essentially exists as an organisation, as a union almost, and it is a closed shop. And this is why you have figures. I mean, you have they play slightly different roles in this. You got Millennial Woes, who is the HR mother hen, which is again a very accurate label. It's not one that I conceptualised, I don't think. That might be Baden Reese's one there, but he is a mother hen. That's just his character, and he operates Millennial. This is part of the structural kind of scaffolding of the Dissident Right. It needs something like this, and he provided it, to be like it is. And what he does is he essentially, this is a way to, no one gets on Millennial unless they're basically, he sniffs around them and performs this HR role and thinks, yeah, this he's all right. He's going to be, a worthy member, a lower member, but a worthy member of, what essentially is this union. So he basically grants people wider membership of this kind of like organisation. And, in a managerial sense at the top, you've got someone like Parvini. And as I think I said on another video before, like, he is basically, his character, he is a busy CUNT. And the nature of the busy CUNT is they don't need to be particularly bright. They don't need to be charismatic. They just get in, and they're often, I mean, if you've worked in jobs, unlike Millennial Woes, you'll probably be aware of this kind of archetype. They just get in, and they're always just getting involved, and they're always trying to flex, and they're always trying to make themselves, in some way, shape or form, seem to be indispensable. And, if it's an organisation or a structure around people who aren't particularly dynamic, such as Morgoth is a prime example, many others, they're not particularly dynamic. They're kind of low-hanging fruit guys. They just, okay, they will just allow a busy CUNT. They'll just think, well, okay, if he wants to basically do this, whatever. This kind of like indifference to this sort of stuff. And I mean, it'll really bring organisations down, actually, in a lot of ways, because, as I say, these kind of people, they're not particularly talented. They don't particularly have good vision. And they do kind of often kind of take control. And I think that's exactly what Parvini's done. That's why I call him the line manager. That's the role he kind of plays, to my mind. You have sort of these other structures like Greg Jansen. I mean, again, it's all just grift. Like, these people, they just want paying. Greg Johnson, like, he's, I think he's genuine. He is genuinely pro-Ukraine and everything, but he doesn't want to rock the boat. He doesn't want to call anyone out. Like, so, if you sort of call out anyone in his little sort of, I don't know if it's distinct, but whatever, he's slightly adjacent to the sort of the more British ones. If you criticise them, you'll be cast out because you're criticising his quote-unquote talent. And his quote-unquote talent gets, viewers for his paywall chat show. I mean, Frody embodies it more than anything else. I mean, I've done multiple videos on Frody. I'm appalled by the guy, in all honesty. This is a guy, again, it's just about money. you know, he's taken on the role as the pro-Ukraine guy, you know, but he's the pro-Ukraine guy who will never ever who will never even highlight them, who'll just accept them and all their ziggurism and all their sort of snide, like, I'm neutral, and he reputation launders for them, mostly embodied by Morgoth, but others too. But I mean, Morgoth, with bells on, he just sort of thought, oh, well, I'll go and see Fruity every once in a while and do a little tap dance. Meanwhile, you're doing all your information laundering, day in, day out, constantly leaning, constantly pushing the narrative one way, literal information laundering, like plain sight, which you revealed with your clever little tweet to your line manager, you know. So that's Frodi's role within the Confederation. And again, donations wide open. It's all about the money. This is what these people are like. Now, are they the only people on the internet doing that? No, far from it. This is the nature of things today, isn't it? Dog is going off. I mean, this is the nature of the internet and the wider culture. It's full of grifters. All right. I'm not personally against people earning money. Well, I am against them if they're earning money from this kind of stuff. I don't think you should, like, political commentary. I just don't think it's... I just don't like it. I think that this sort of stuff should be distinct. There shouldn't be financial imperatives involved, because if financial imperatives get involved, it leads to ultimately corruption, which is exactly what I would say has happened to the Dissident Right. I mean, I'm not going to get into that. People will probably know what I think about that. To that bothered, they can watch the many videos I've made on that. But, you know, I mean, you can see it, the parasocial thing. Again, this is like the key thing really to conceptualize. You need to understand the whole parasocial relationships, how they work, how they're manipulated, and how they're manipulated on the micro and how they're manipulated on the macro. You know, manipulated on the micro in the sense of, like, you've got an influencer, he wants subs, he wants engagements, he wants comments, he wants donations, like, you know, genuine donations, John from Barnsley donations. So, you know, he gets these people and they begin to feel a parasocial relationship with them, whatever reason, and he indulges them. I mean, Morgoth does this again, plain sight. He refers to people as friend, but the only people he refers to as friend is when he's talking about them subscribing to his blog. Like, you know, I mean, it's just quite funny, really, isn't it? But, so that's the micro. This is how an influencer kind of maintains, you know, his hold on his audience, essentially. But, you know, I mean, that's just whatever. That's by the by. But the real thing is how these people, or how these parasocial relationships, they get influenced or they get used by organisations. I'm not talking about Dissident Right. I'm talking about, you know, again, the example I used previously, I think is a good one. In the 1960s, which is very, very shortly after this was all conceptualized, 1950s, you know, the idea of parasocial relationship was written about by sociologists around 56, 57. And then a few years later, you had the Beatles and the Mop Tops and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, they used the Beatles, they established them as a parasocial relationship, cheeky chappies, sardonic, all the rest, lovable scamps. And then once the parasocial relationship had really set in, both sides of the Atlantic, you had the big switch. And they started advocating LSD, started saying they were bigger than Jesus, started, you know, using all the occultist imagery with Crowley and all that stuff. And then, you know, and then you have the sort of Hinduism and the mysticism and meditation and the dropout, and then you got lying in bed for peace and all the rest of it. So you can see how the figures in question, they're just, you know, they're just pawns on the chessboard essentially, and they're just pushed into position and used as a delivery device, and they're well paid for it. So that's one example, and it's exactly the same that state actors such as Russia do today. They pay parasocial influencers in the West to launder their narratives. Pretty simple. You know, they don't need to establish these figures. I mean, they can waft them up, certainly. They can waft them up with bots. They can waft them up with engagement, all the rest of it. Viewers. They can waft them up with donations. You know, literally put them in place. Because, you know, Not the figures I talk about. They're not rich people, I don't think. If they, I don't think they've made a huge amount of money. I don't think this is like some massive heist or anything. I just think they're low-hanging fruit grabbers, and they've just sort of feathered their nest from it. Relatively small amounts we're talking here. 500 quid here, £1,000 here, this kind of thing. I mean, Colette, you received a 300 quid super chat, which I've put on videos before. As I stated, I mean, the Novorussia account, formed 3 years ago, dishes out these 300 quid super chats, uses like explicitly kind of Russian grammatical phrasing, like sounds like a sort of, a decent English speaker, but absolutely not a native. Like, feel myself confident to state that, is what I believe I kind of pointed to before. This is plain sight. So he's getting 300 quid on just some, random stream. If you don't think that the others, after they've done their clever little bit of information laundering, don't get likewise, I just think you're deluded. So anyway, not to get into old Russia and all that stuff again, but, just from what the organisational structure is, and that's what you get. And again, I'll say this, when I started, commenting on all this, not long after the invasion, I just got blocked by all of them. All of them blocked me, literally. You know what I mean? And it's like, certainly Morgoth and certainly Millennial Woes were aware of me prior to the war and prior to everything else. I think they both followed me. I think Morgoth he actually forwarded my first videos. I made a video about football. That was my first kind of video, and he sort of retweeted it or something. He said, "Oh, this is brilliant." So, whatever. So they all knew who I was. But when it became apparent that I was actually living in Ukraine, which again Morgoth would have known because he had forwarded other videos of me in Ukraine in 2019. And in those videos, I was basically saying, you don't want to leave, you shouldn't just scurry off. Which again, I get accused of. I left again. I've said this multiple times, but people keep saying this. I left years ago, way before I was political. I had no interest in politics. If you would have asked me in 2010, what do you think about homogeneity and all that, I'd just be like, I don't know, fucking, whatever. Not, just didn't think about it. It was not anywhere in my, decision making. Whatever, move on from that. But I was saying in that video, and this is what I believe and I still maintain to the day, if you do literally just leave with a bad energy and you go to a new place, you'll take that energy with you. And you do kind of meet some of these people, and I think I talked about them in Spain. And you go to some British bar or whatever, and everyone's sitting around. Most of them are somewhat based, and they'll all talk about a town, but it's just after a certain point, this is all they'll fucking bang on about. Oh, I've put so many foot in new, so many this, so many that, and it's just they've taken the energy with them, you know what I mean? Which is the point I was making. He forwarded that one as well, so he knew full well that I lived in Ukraine. When I then sort of challenged him on the stuff he was saying, and I was like, well, no, I live in Ukraine. He actually accused me of being a Tory boy, because I was basically, for the defence of Ukraine. He said, call me a Tory boy, which is fairly bizarre, because I've never voted Conservative. But then I said, no, I live in Ukraine, and the fucking city's been bombed. What do you want me to do? Something along those lines. Again, no, oh, okay, you're in fucking Kiev now, are you? Okay, what it's like. This would be a genuine reaction if they were interested in the situation. Because he would think, oh, hang on, Wyvern, yeah, I remember that guy, okay, all right. Okay, what's it like? Give me your ideas, give me your thoughts. Maybe I can, just give me an idea, and maybe I can sort of use this perspective. I'm not expecting you to change your mind or anything, but that would be the natural reaction, I would suggest. But no, you just get blocked by all of them. Fucking, you know what I mean? So they're not interested in any of this. When you challenge them on the stuff they say, not even that directly, not even particularly abrasively, you just get fucking blocked or ignored. Like Parvini, he was saying about the electricity. Oh, why didn't Putin do that? I was like, what are you talking about? He did this. Of course he fucking did this. Produced one of the schedules we were on. And it's like, challenge the bullshit. It's a big thread. They're all in there. The big hitters are in there discussing it. I present it and I go, what are you talking about? How can you say that he didn't target the energy structure? This is nonsense. This is just unambiguously false. Like, of course he did. This is a sort of schedule we were on. Present schedule. Literally zero responses to any of it. Just ignored. You know. And I remember, because back then you could see, I looked at it, it got like 13 profile views or something, but no responses. So what do you make of that? Are they interested? They're not interested in anything that counters their narrative at all. The only way they'll accept it is if it's via a prism of this kind of like essentially controlled opposition, which is what Frody is. Frody is controlled opposition, controlled pro-Ukraine opposition. Now, he's not controlled by anything other than his own avarice and, you know, his interest in feathering his role or continuing his role in playing it. Well, okay, that's what it is. But anyone who's like a genuine pro-Ukraine voice gets derided, gets mocked, gets blocked, gets shut down. So there is no real debate on there. As I've said, as others have said many times, if you look at Millennial, they never have disagreements. It's almost like, tell me your opinion on this. And then the guy will do his little tap dance. And I think it's just very inane. It's like kind of almost vanilla-y. And I mean, I think this is a HR mother hen archetype overseeing it. You know, it's nothing like that earlier energy that you saw 10 years ago in these kind of scenes, which was a bit, you know, was a bit more fucking Wild West like, you know, and maybe that was just a sort of burst of energy, okay, but the latter stuff is very, very feminine. Certainly Millennial Woes, it's just the nature of the guy, it's just how he is. And as I say, it's all overseen in the interest, it serves the interest of this Confederation of Grift. They're all pretty well paid. I mean, I say that I don't think they're earning huge amounts. Perhaps I should reevaluate that, because they earn a good income. There's no debate in that. I mean, Millennial Woes, there's $31,000, $32,000 on Ethereum and Ethereum and Bitcoin alone over 12 months. That's just on those. So, I mean, he's got his other Grift portals, he's got his Substack, all the rest of it. He must be on about 50,000 a year. To me, that's a fucking decent income in Britain for a single guy, which is what he is, you know. Certainly, you shouldn't need to fucking beg and go, oh, the situation's desperate, you know, because you can't fucking sign a tenancy agreement. Again, not to get into that again, but I mean, you know, I don't know how people can look at this and not conclude that it's pathetic in the literal sense and just be appalled by it. This is revolting. Like, how can anything like this be admired? I don't know. As I say, this is the parasocial unreality of today. This scene really, it just comes out of longevity after a certain point. It's like it's been around so long, these figures, people like Woes, they've kind of just embedded into the sort of scaffolding of these people, the people in the distant right of their kind of like e-life. You know, they wake up, they look through, they scroll through their phone, and they've got, oh, there's something from him, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's just kind of, they've been worn down and they've kind of embedded and they've got their claws in. But it's just, I don't know how anyone with any fucking vitality, you know, can look at them and be anything other than kind of like, you know, just appalled by them, really. So, bit of a ramble, running to a conclusion. So, get back to my walk and wish you a good day.
Darby said, loving Millennial, can you let Morgoth know that I found myself weeping after watching his "And the Band Played On" video? Can you let Morgoth know that I found myself weeping? I found myself weeping after watching his "And the Band Played On" video.
For one heart to be crying, too many teardrops for one heart to carry on. You're way out on top now, since you left me. You're always laughing way down at me. But watch out now, there. We'll be together for just a little while, and I'm gonna put you way down here, and you'll start crying 96 tears. Cry. Right down there, looking up, and I might wait, come up here, but I don't see you waving now. I'm way down here, wondering how I'm gonna get you, but I know now I'll just cry, I'll just cry. Teardrops for one heart to be crying. Too many teardrops for one heart to carry on. You're gone.